Hi friends, it's Lauren Taylor. Thanks for joining me in my craft room today. It's Fandom Friday and I'm going to be using some products from Miss Ink Stamps, specifically this Kisses clear stamp set and coordinating die. I think the overall theme of this set is hilarious. I also have my Eieio frame die set and I went ahead and die cut the scallop rectangle out of some pink sparkly glitter cardstock and the white kind of frame without any details out of some white cardstock that I like to use for ink blending. And I'm going to stencil the skeleton heart hands here from the Halloween heart stencil, also from Miss Ink Stamps, to basically create my background. When I'm done, you won't see a whole lot of the heart part, but I'm okay with that. It's just for the background. I really want my creepy prison guard guy here. You know me, I try not to say the names of things because I like to protect my fandom companies. So anyway, I'm going to be making that the focus of my card anyway. So I'm going to start with stenciling. So I'm getting my little stenciling set up here. I do use products from Waffle Flower. I use their stencil mat, their grip mat, and I'm going to place that white piece onto the grip mat to start with some ink blending. So I took my sparkle cardstock and went over to my distress oxides, and I thought Spun Sugar looked pretty much as close as I could get it to that pink sparkly cardstock. And I'm going to just ink blend that Spun Sugar all over this background piece. So I'm not going to let you, watch me color this whole entire piece, but I do just ink blend and I keep adding ink from the pad till I get a nice covered image of, well, not image, a covered piece of pink cardstock. Then I'm bringing in Kitsch Flamingo, so I'm just going to clean off my brush real quick, and I'm just going to go around the edges. I just kind of want that vignette look, just darken up the edges a little bit. Kitsch Flamingo is not that much darker than Spun Sugar, so it's just to add a little bit of shadow around the edges. Once I'm happy with how it looks, I decided that I wanted to add some splatter first, so I thought I would use Kitsch Flamingo since I already used it to darken up the edges, but like I said, it's not that much darker than Spun Sugar, so I'm going to grab a brush here and tap it onto the background, and you can barely see anything. So I'll go ahead and run back over to my Distress Oxides, and I decided to grab Picked Raspberry because that is a much darker pink, and I'm going to splatter that on as well. And that is definitely darker and giving me more what I wanted, the look I was going for. But honestly, I wanted a little bit more, and I thought, why don't I get my Distress Spritz, because there's also like that mica stuff in it, so it's not, super shiny and pretty. So I just shook it up to get that glitter, mica glitter going into the mix, and then there's like a little ball in there to help shake it up. And then I just took the lid off and used it as like I did my paintbrush and just splattered it onto the background. Once it was dry, I went ahead and placed my stencil. That die perfectly fits those skeleton heart hands. If anything, if you're not into this particular fandom, I hope that you at least get a kick out of the skeleton hands. I think they're great. And I'm going to use some stencil paste. So I went through my collection of pastes from Ranger and Simon. I have them all because I have full set syndrome. I'm using the Cross My Heart Simon Hurley Solar Paste. Now, these were gifted to me, so I do have full set syndrome. I'm very grateful to Ranger for sending them to me, enabling my habit. But anything I haven't received, I've definitely purchased on my own. So I am adding this solar paste, which is, as you can see, a very light color, and as it dries I feel like it gets even more magical. So it's going to look really pretty when I do my stencil reveal here in just a minute, but it's going to look even better when it's dry, especially in the final picture. So once I have a nice even amount of solar paste through my stencil, I'm going to go ahead and do a stencil reveal, and I can see my happy hands. And I was actually creating at dusk, and the sun was now coming through my blind, so I closed those real quick. But here you can see how it looks before it's dry. It definitely, looks more opaque, like you can see it, but as it dries it will take on some of that ink that I blended with, which is why I didn't start with a pink cardstock. I wanted to use ink, so you'll see how it looks at the end. I think it looks like 100 times better. So I set it aside to dry, and we're going to move on to stamping. So again, this is the Kisses clear stamps from Miss Ink Stamps, and I'm going to stamp it with some alcohol marker friendly black ink. So this particular one is a Blackout hybrid ink from Ink on 3. So I stamped it twice. I do like stamping at least twice with my images. I just want to make sure I get a nice clean stamp and border, and then I'll go ahead and clean off my stamp off camera, and I'm going to zoom in here so we can work on some coloring. I'm going to use my Olo markers, and this guy has, you know, like 2 different colors, black and kind of a bluishy gray color. So I decided to go, since this is going to be more of a Valentine's theme card, instead of using like kind of a blue gray for his face and hands, I'm going to use more of a blue violet gray, but I'll talk about that when I get there. So I'm using cool grays because I want it to be like this guard, this prison guard, to be more of an object than like a animal or a critter, if that makes sense. I usually like using warm colors for that. But as this is, you know, a soul-sucking creature, I thought cool grays. We're going to go with cold, dark colors for him. So I use CG9 first to add the darkest part, shadows where I wanted the color to be in his cloak. And then I'm using CG7 to be the mid-tone. And I do normally use like 2 colors for most of my coloring, sometimes 3, but a lot of times it ends up being a dark and a light. But since his cloak is like very large and there's a lot of area to cover, a lot of like wrinkles and different shadows in his cloak, I will bring in a 3rd color or a 3rd shade, so that way I can add a little bit more dimension with a 3rd color. So I'm going to bring in CG5 after I'm done adding that last little bit of shadow, and then completely color in the cloak. So I know that his cloak is supposed to be a dark gray or black, but I don't like really coloring with black. I like coloring with grays so you can still see the lines of the images. And while it does kind of lighten the overall image, I just think it gives it more dimension when you can see a little more of the details of the stamp. So the jump from I keep saying that, CG7 to CG5 is actually kind of big. I wish there was a 6, something a little bit more in between these two. So I am going to take my time and add lots of color over that mid-tone and try to blend it out into the lighter. So you can see I go back and forth. This actually, for it being one color, it does take me a little bit of time to color. I like leaving in my coloring for those who like to watch. As always, I know I'm already like halfway done, but as always, you can use the chapters down below in my description or at the bottom of the video. You can see where you can jump ahead to the next section. So if watching coloring is not your jam, which I completely understand, you can skip to the next section. So I brought in the 9 again, and I'm just adding those little speckling spots I like to add. And then I'm moving on to the blue violet, like I said. I'm using BV 4.4 and BV 4.2 to color in the face and the hands. I am going to bring in a darker shade of that BV to color in the mouth. So I do BV 4.7. And then I'm going to do a few more of those little like stippling dots again with the 4.4. I'm going to grab my white gel pen and I'm going to go and try to cover everywhere where I went out of the line. So just going around and adding white gel highlights. Again, these images can be very dainty sometimes and I tend to color a little fast. So white gel pen is my best friend and that I can cover where I went out of the lines. And then I'll go ahead and add a few highlights just around the cloak. Just give it a little bit of more highlight and detail. I love a cartoony look for my stamped images, so this is what I like to do to give it more of a kind of glossy cartoon look. But you can skip this if white gel highlights are not your jam either. So once all that coloring is done, I'm actually going to re-stamp it. I really love doing this. You've probably seen me do it in quite a few of my videos. If you have a repositioning or a MISTI re-stamping tool, you can definitely do this. I stamped it with Nocturne VersaFine Clair ink, and as you can see, it just really brightens up those lines. I love my VersaFine Clairs. As I pull out another one, they are just my favorite inks to stamp with for sentiments and outlines, but unfortunately they're not alcohol marker friendly, so I do use them as like a second second stamp, or like, adding those lines again. For the little kisses in my stamp set, there's one little kiss in there. I'm using the Hawthorn Rose VersaFine Clair ink. This is one of the newer colors. It's beautiful and it matches that sparkly cardstock that I chose just perfectly. I went ahead and stamped 5 of them. I will only use 3, but sometimes I don't get my die lined up perfectly, so I like stamping like little things like that a few extra times because it doesn't hurt to cut it out in case I, need a spare piece. Now for my sentiment, I'm doing Sealed with a Kiss, and I didn't know how to add it to the card, so I thought a banner would be good. I have a banner from Popsiclesticks from her mini Slimline Stitch Layers dies that I like to use for sentiment, so I went ahead and just die cut that out of some white cardstock. And with VersaFine Clairs, you don't need to always use a Misty. They stamp so well the first time. So I went ahead and just free stamped this with a block. As you can see, perfect and adorable. So I have all of my elements ready, but unfortunately my background just like wasn't drying fast enough. So after I get this sparkle piece of cardstock adhered to my card base, I'm going with a horizontal card. Obviously my background was horizontal, but I'm gonna go ahead and use my heat tool to help me dry it. Now you don't want to do it like too crazy hot, and it is almost dry. So my gun has a high and a low setting, so I used the low setting. I dried it from the back, dried it from the front, tried to make sure I didn't completely warp my panel, but just tried to help speed up that drying process so I could keep going on my card. As you can see, I'm trying to tap it, make sure that it's not wet still, and it's pretty good. It's still a teeny tiny bit of tackiness, so I will be careful, pressing down on it onto my glass board, but for the most part, it's dry. If you have the time, I like to do like paste at night and then the next day, work with those panels, but I was trying to film this video, so I didn't have time. So I added some foam adhesive all along the back of the panel just to give this card some dimension between the two. Also, gluing on top of glitter cardstock is not always the easiest thing to do, so the foam adhesive just helps make sure it's going to stick to the glitter. I'm adding foam adhesive to the back of my prison guard here, and I'm trying to figure out how I want this layout to be. I was trying really hard to be able to still see the heart for the hands, but ultimately I just accepted that it was going to be kind of covered. I think you get the idea that they're heart hands. I mean, I do. I think everyone will. So I'm just going to add that character, the fandom character, to the center of the card, and I'm going to add my sentiment towards the center as well. I'm going to go up a little bit just so you don't cover the bottom part of him so much. I didn't want it completely in the centered, but it's like centered and down a little bit. That's my measurement in case you weren't sure. Centered and down a little bit. So once that's in place, I did use foam adhesive to attach that. I just put it on the edges of the banner and, what would stick to the back panel. And here I'm going to decide on those 3 kiss stamps. Like I said, I did 2 extra. One didn't stamp fully and one the die was kind of off a little. So I was happy that I at least got 3 good ones. And then I decided to grab some different confetti or sparkle sequins. That's what I was looking for. These are from This Calls for Confetti, and I'm going to use the opaque iridescent blush. I felt that it matched that spun sugar background just perfectly. So I'm going to pour some out into a little tray, and I'm going to choose, I think I do 5 or 7. I think I do 5. Maybe it is 7. I like things in odd numbers. So I'm going to go around and just put a few around the character here, just like I did with the kisses. And once I get them in place, I did 5. I can count them real quick. I did 5. I picked them up with my pickup stick and glued them down with liquid glue. And that is gonna, oh no, I attached my kisses. I forgot about this. My little lips, I'm gonna use foam adhesive for those. They are just the right size for these tiny little square pieces of foam adhesive that I have. I love the thickness of these from This Calls for Confetti. It's like the perfect thinness. They give dimension without bulk. if that makes sense. I think they're great. So I'm adding these last 3 kisses to the card, just like the confetti around my prison guard here, and that will finish off my card. Here's a close-up look at how this card turned out. I think it's perfect for Valentine's Day, or someone who's into this magical fandom, a little love card for them. I just think it turned out really fun. I love it, and I hope you do too. Thanks for joining me on this Fandom Friday. As always, let me know if there is a stamp set or a theme you'd like to see from me in the future. Just drop me a comment, and I'll definitely check it out and try to do something for you at another Fandom Friday. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!